Why are so many physicians interested in real estate investments? Why do physicians make such good real estate investors? And what's the quick and dirty of assessing a real estate syndication? Find out on this episode. Welcome to the Physician's Guide to Doctoring, a show by me, Dr. Bradley Block, and this is a practical guide for practicing physicians where we interview experts in and out of medicine to find out everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. Dr. Pranay Parikh, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Hey, Bradley, super excited to chat.
So what is your real estate origin story, right? Because I know I've seen you online since I think you were a resident, right? So you started this real estate business pretty early, got connected with Peter Kim, formerly known as Passive Income MD. And then, big reveal, he kind of like Jim Daly did, lost his anonymity. So you got started in the game pretty early. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So when I actually, it seems in residency, but I had just graduated residency. And I knew that it was really important what I did with my money than how much I made it. Because while I was growing up, I lived a pretty good middle class life. But my dad had to work 2 jobs to get there. I never saw him. And it was nice. He helped college and a small part of med school. But that was at the cost of our relationship, or at least a close relationship that I saw with other people. So I knew that when I grew up that I wanted to do something different. So now that I was making the attendance salary, I said, okay, I got to take this money and I got to be smart with it, And I had, just like all other doctors, we had do this delayed gratification. And I thought if I put money in the stock market and my retirement accounts, that yes, I'd be able to enjoy it, but that'd be 35 years in the future. I can't really live off that money. I can't make substantial change. So I looked around, I looked to see what I could do. And real estate, it seemed not that bad. I figured out I could do cardiology, I could do all this other stuff. I could figure out real estate. So I bought my first 4-unit in Long Beach, California. And it wasn't that bad. I didn't know. I went to the closing where you do an inspection. And I had no idea what I was looking for. I was just nodding my head. But, eventually I kind of figured things out. But over time, after trying to find another property, it just took me so long that I thought there had to be a better way. And that's kind of when I found passive real estate and Peter, and the rest is history.
The rest is not history. I'm sure there's more to the story than that.
Yeah. So I made a conscious decision after residency, after about my 4-unit, that I'm going to be more involved. I'm going to try to meet mentors, other people that are better with their money than I am, And so someone on one of those doctor Facebook groups had posted, hey, does anyone live in Los Angeles? And I said, hey, I live in Los Angeles. I will host an event. I'll pay for it. I'll do the cleanup. I'll market it. I'll do everything. I just want to be involved. And Peter actually saw that and messaged me on Facebook Messenger. And our very first phone call was 3.5 hours. In the middle, my wife had to be like, let me listen to who that is. Is that really a guy, or are you talking to some girl? But yeah, we just instantly connected. And he's like, hey, I'm growing this Facebook group of my own. Do you want to help? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll be honest. I don't know how to do it. I was Googling a lot of stuff, like how do you increase Facebook engagement and all that stuff. But he saw that I was willing to put in the effort and the time, and it was unpaid. And we just kind of grew it over time. And then we decided, hey, we work really well together. Let's create a course. Let's create a real estate company. And then Peter and I have very similar personalities, which is great because we amplify each other's strengths, but we also amplify each other's weaknesses. And so after we started Ascent Equity Group, our real estate company, we brought on Myth that's much more analytical, much more cynical to our unbridled optimism. Now we really have a good rounded out team.
Nice. So you find someone to hedge your weaknesses.
Yeah, definitely. I think strategic partners it just makes life so much fun. Peter and I did that for Passive Income MD, and now we added Myth, and it's fun to hear other people's sides. And, we get into arguments, but good arguments that we all have strong beliefs, but loosely held. So a lot of times we'll have completely opposite viewpoints, but at the end, we'll have something that just looks so much better with all 3 of our inputs.
Real estate seems to be a common thread here with physicians. It seems like if you're going to have a side gig, it's going to either be coaching or real estate. And that's it, right? Like you don't hear of like, hey, is anyone else opening up a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise, right? Like there's no, at least that I've seen, physician Facebook group for franchises or physician, like there are other ways to make money out there aside from real estate and the stock market and working as a physician. But it seems like a lot of physicians really gravitate towards that as a side gig. And the reason I'm saying side gig is because it is an investment, yes, but it's also more work for more income. So, I think it's fair to, for you, maybe it's main gig and the physician's a side gig, but, for the most part, I think we're doing it as a side gig. So why do you think so many physicians gravitate towards it?
I completely agree with you. Coaching is, physicians are natural coaches, right? When you're an intern, you coach the medical students, and when you're a senior resident, you coach, and you so on. And real estate also, it's an investment, but it's fun. You get to use a different side of your brain. But one issue I see with people is they buy 1 unit or even 5 units, and it's hard to get scale when you have that less. The people that are really successful have 20, 30, 40. And I'm not saying you do that at once, but you build a portfolio over time. You really have to treat it like a second job. And that's something I actually didn't want to do. Eventually I did it because that's what Ascent is. But in the starting, it's a lot of work, even if you have a property manager. So if you're thinking about getting into real estate, really consider it like a second job. And there's some benefit in doing that. So maybe your spouse wants to cut down his or her hours and go into that. But, I'd argue that there are a lot of physicians that are in other stuff, but there's not a quorum. There's not like hundreds of them. And that's why you don't hear it. And a small plug, Peter and I do this virtual conference called Leverage and Growth Summit every year. Free, it's in March, it's virtual. What we do is we highlight people that are doing interesting stuff in medicine. So, quick example, we had this radiation oncologist. She realized that she would radiate women's breasts that have breast cancer, and they'd have just so much pain when they put on a bra, and they could never find a bra that works. So she created her own. We had this pediatrician who saw all the complaints about all the toxins, and I'm not saying like fake toxins, like the legitimate toxins that were in a lot of plastics. And she created a whole class of steelwear for children. So it's cool stuff like that, but you don't have a ton of people. You have one-offs here and there, so you don't necessarily hear about them as much. But real estate's something that we can kind of pick up. It's different, and it's fun.
I do see some physicians in my feed who also do sell some things that capitalize on people's fears of fake toxins. So that's out there too. Hopefully this person's doing, what they're doing is legit. But, there's some fear mongering, which is actually, unfortunately, a really lucrative side gig. You can make a lot of money off of fear.
No doubt. And it's same with real estate. And that's why I know we'll probably talk about this later. How do you pick between the different people that are in real estate? Because it seems like everyone, especially syndications, everyone is getting into it, right? They're raising money. And you're right, because you really have to differentiate yourself. And it's not just, oh, hey, this is a doctor. I trust doctors. That's part of it. But you do have to differentiate yourself. And it's easy to say, look at the stock market. It's down 25%, which it is for the year. But you have to have more than that. You have to really know what you're doing, because there is risk in real estate, and it's a different type of risk than the stock.
We talk a lot about side gigs on this show. So if your side gig or even your main gig is a medical technology product that you want to pitch, or you're even in the early stages of product development, you could benefit from consulting with Charm Economics. They use government data, peer-reviewed journals, and trade literature to support and enhance your business model at all stages. Whether in early stage pitch deck creation, return on investment modeling, or peer-reviewed article production, they can help. See how Charm Economics can transform your business development today, so you can focus on building your product, growing your network, and implementing your vision. Check them out at charmeconomics.com. Yeah, the stock market's down, but interest rates are up, which cuts into the profits for real estate investments. But at the same time, inflation's up, so you do want more in real estate. So there's a lot of moving parts. So when you buy a single unit, right, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of risk. It's all on you, as you did with your first investment. A lot of opportunity for high return, but no risk, no reward. On the other end, there are REITs, right? These real estate investment trusts where you're mitigating your risks with scale, but it's a fund of buildings. So your returns are getting devoured by fees, right? So where does Ascent fall in that continuum?
Yeah. And I like how you called it a continuum because it is a spectrum, right? And we like to think about how much kind of responsibility you have. So if you put your name on the lease, right, you're a landlord, there's that. And then on the other end is like REITs, where it's you can buy, sell, you have zero input, you just buy it like you would any stock. So I'd like to talk a little bit about so real estate investment trust. It's a company, they go out and buy real estate and you buy shares of that company. Some are publicly traded, which is nice because say tomorrow you need money, you just sell your REIT. You sell your shares in that REIT and you could take it out. So that's what we call liquid, meaning you can get access to your money quickly. There are private REITs like Blackstone, like Starwood. And you might have heard that a lot of them are having issues because a lot of people, even those you can take your money out and it's relatively liquid, but a lot of them are having problems because too many people are trying to get their money out and they're having to sell their properties at a loss. So that's an issue. We're somewhere in the middle. What we do is we buy single properties. We partner with someone. So it's not three doctors that are running this property. It's someone that has billions of dollars assets under management. But it's a little bit different than other people. So we don't take a small piece of a large deal. We take the whole deal, meaning we bring in 90 to 95% of the money in the deal. And that gives us a lot of rights. In real estate lingo, it's called major decision rights. So kind of push our weight around, meaning we can tell them when to buy, when to sell, what kind of renovations we want. And that gives us a lot of protection because we have so much. And that's kind of how Goldman Sachs, Blackstone, that's how they buy properties. They don't really send their people in their $4,000 suits to Alabama, right? They partner with someone boots underground that kind of runs it and they help with their operational efficiency. So that's kind of our niche. And I know a lot of other people will find a deal and they'll just have a very small piece of it. And there's the role for those people as well. But we've been fortunate to grow over time because we have had a large amount of investors interested in our deals.
So it sounds like you cut a tier of fees out of that by cutting out like another middleman.
Correct. So when you have, so for example, a REIT, there's a company at the very top, and then they have their level of fees. And then you'll have a sponsor that is working and they'll have their fees. Potentially you have one more layer. So there's multiple layers, but because they have so many deals, they have to have fund level fees. So our goal is to try to get as much out of that as we can. And we negotiate with our partner like, hey, together our fees need to look like this. And we need to try to decrease that. And it's important when you're looking at returns, when you're trying to compare one deal to the next, make sure it's net return or investor level, meaning that those are the returns that hit your pocket after all the fees, after everything is said and spoken for. Because sometimes people will just put their returns, it'll look great at like a 20 IRR, but then they haven't taken their fees and all that stuff out. Yeah.
Okay. So I think I understand the way your business works, which is like someone's looking for money to invest in a building, right? And you say us. So instead of them having to find multiple people to invest in their building, you say, we'll just take it all. We'll take the whole thing. So they won't have to spend time and effort finding a number of investors to put together the deal. Your job is to find those investors because you already have them at your disposal. And then you just take most of the building.
Yeah, exactly. And we're fortunate because instead of having to go out and find these deals, they come to us. So for example, in August of last year, we got a deal that had an interest rate of 3.9 fixed for 9 years. And interest rates are in the 5s and 6s then. We're actually looking at a deal right now where the interest rate is 4.3%. Now it's in the 6s and 7s, and I've even seen 9% interest rate. So one of the benefits in being able to do what we do is that people bring us deals like that. And we work across multiple states, multiple partners. And so we're really able to kind of be cherry pick what we think looks the best.
So it's not like medicine where you're going to need to get a medical license everywhere you have a building. You can just you just do the deal.
It's kind of ridiculous. I was thinking about trying to get credentialed at so I have a California license. I was thinking about getting credentialed at another hospital, but it takes like 4 months. It's such a ridiculous process. But yeah, we work across the US and we're agnostic. If you bring a good deal and you have a good track record, we'll work with you.
So when you're looking at a deal, so let's say you're
Mm-hmm.
teaching someone about real estate, right? Someone who's going to be going to these syndication meetings where,
Mm-hmm.
these meet and greets where you're trying to find people putting together deals, right? You're their mentor. What are you telling them about what they should be looking for?
Yeah. So there's kind of 3 different facets for this. The first and most important is who's running the deal. And it's just like if you have LeBron, right? Your team's probably getting to the finals or at least the playoffs or Kobe. But if you put even LeBron on a bad team, right? But then say you have a team of people that just suck. Even if you're the Lakers, you're probably not going to be very successful. So number one, what does a team look like? Have they been around? LeBron now is much more skillful than LeBron 10 years ago. So what have they done? If there's some person, not LeBron, but you say they've won 3 finals, I'd be like, NBA finals, I'd be like, okay, yeah, this dude is pretty legit, right? So what is their track record and who are they? So that's number one. And I'd say most of the time that disqualifies a lot of people. And then 3, does that person get along with you? Is how they communicate. So some people are very salesy. Some people are I worked with this one person that I stopped sending people because he was just super sarcastic, and I would send people to him. This is back before we created Ascent, but people would just feel like they were talked down to. We doctors aren't necessarily real estate experts, but how are they willing to talk to you? Will they explain things to you, or do they just look at you as a check with a little bullseye, right? So a lot kind of comes down to who is running the deal. And that's by far, if that's the only thing you look at, that's the first thing to look at. Number 2, how does the money flow from the deal to you? I've seen great sponsors, but they are getting the lion's share of the money, which kind of sucks because you're doing a lot of risk. They have control, right? And you're putting in almost all the money. You should get most of the reward, right? And so how does the money work? So if you have a great team and a very equitable kind of waterfall is what we call it, way money flows from the deal to you, that's great. And then the third and the least important is to look at the actual deal itself. Most people do this backwards. They focus on like, what market is it? What does the deal look like? But if you have a great sponsor, the deal's probably going to be okay. I bet you they're not going to buy in the middle of like Ohio or like Alabama unless it makes a ton of sense. We do look at that briefly, make sure it's nothing crazy. Like you don't want to buy you wouldn't want to buy somewhere in Manhattan right now because it's doing very poorly, or San Francisco. But that's the least important because you assume if you've done your due diligence, the team has a great track record, they know what they're doing. So
Wait. I
those are
thought for investments, you should be brave when everyone else is scared and scared when everyone else is brave, right? So if everyone's fleeing San Francisco and Manhattan, seems like a good time to buy.
It is a good time to buy if you really know what you're doing. And I personally want to hit, line drive. I want to hit doubles, triples, sometimes get a home run. But the problem is real estate cycles take 8 to 10 years. And, there's a quote that the market can act, it can act crazier, or it could be opposite of what you think for longer than or it could be not rational for longer than you can stay solvent. So you have to be able to survive. So I'd rather do something in like a Dallas, which has been great. We're looking at a deal in Austin, which is great. Orlando. There's these areas that and then, okay, so last thing about the market, 2 things to look at. 1, population growth. You want to make sure that there's more people that are going into the property, into the market. And 2, you want there to be job growth. So, for example, Austin, and I keep mentioning that just because that's on the top of my head. Austin's unemployment rates in the twos nationally were great. We're in the 3.4, but Austin's even better. So that makes me feel very good about buying a property there. So Manhattan, the unemployment's a lot worse. People are moving out. No doubt, long term, people are going to move in. It's just I don't know if I can hold a property that expensive for that long.
All right. So you said when we're choosing a sponsor, right? So that's the top priority, because if they know what they're doing, then they're going to make it work. Like even if they're working with a product that's less than great, they're going to find a way to make it great because they've got this track record, and they wouldn't have done it to begin with if it wasn't going to be great. Okay. So if I'm selecting a sponsor, should I choose a real estate professional this is their career, or, right, a physician who's doing this as a side gig, right? So I get that human beings are tribal and we tend to trust people that are like us. So physicians are going to trust other physicians, right? If some real estate professional comes up to me, trying to sell me on their investment, I'm going to be skeptical. They're just looking for my money. They just see me as a mark because I'm a physician, right? They're going to try and take advantage of me. Oh, but these guys are doctors like me, so I'm inherently going to trust them, right? So that's how, I think some of these decisions end up being made. But, the more cynical side of me says, why would I invest with a full-time physician, part-time real estate person? Although, granted, you guys, it's the opposite, rather than a full-time real estate person.
That is a great question. And I'm surprised that I don't get it asked it more often because it's very legitimate.
They're thinking it. They just don't say it.
Yeah, and they should. They should. I don't know if they want to offend me or not offend me, but it is. And I tell people when people ask what I do, I tell them my doctor is my side gig because it is. I do majority real estate. So one quick example, we make decisions that are different than a real estate professional. So let me tell you about a deal that someone brought to me. So it was in Portland. It was a screamer of a deal, like a 25% return. But what happened is in deals that are affordable housing, you usually get a benefit for taxes for 15 years. And this one, the tax, it's called an abatement, where you get to save money on your taxes, was expiring. So the person who owned it was like, I don't want this anymore. And we're selling it. So a sponsor came to us. They said, yeah, we're going to go in, we're going to kick everyone out. We're going to add $600 per apartment. We're going to do it over 3 years, and it's going to be awesome. We're going to make a lot of money. You're going to make a lot of money. It's going to be great for everyone except those 300 people we're going to kick out. So sucks for them. We've done this a lot. The law's on our side. And numbers wise, on paper, it looks great. And I'm sure someone took them up on that offer, and they probably made a fortune. But it's something that we specifically, it goes against our morals, right? And so we really try to look for a win-win. Like, hey, let's go in, let's buy a property, let's improve security, let's really make it like a family. So our last property, we added these nice little fences and this little garden. So even though that they live in an apartment, it feels like a home. And so sometimes we sacrifice return for that, and we're okay with that. And so that's a little bit different. But two, and this happened pretty recently, because we work with so many different people, and a lot of times we're kind of underestimated as doctors. We were working with this one sponsor. They are fully vertically integrated, meaning they do everything in-house, construction, property management, and it's kind of the gold standard to be vertically integrated. It'd be like if you're doing a podcast and you're so successful, you do everything. You hire everyone and then you do everything in-house. So we went there, we walked the properties around that property, and we found out that there was one that was a lot nicer. So we talked to them. We're like, hey guys, we're doctors. We're looking at some real estate. Like, could you tell us about what vendor you use and how you guys do it? They're like, oh yeah, we use this vendor. It costs this much. So we reached out to them. And so long story short, compared to the vertically integrated, we were able to get higher level. So we were able to go from like really sucky countertops to granite countertops, like really nice lights, and save $600 per unit renovation. And it's a couple hundred units. So that's a huge bump, right? And people don't necessarily think about doing that because they're vertically integrated. They think, oh, my team is the best. But, we don't, we shop around, we talk to all these people, and people are willing to talk to us. So I think there's, we have a different level of integrity, and, it's a gray zone. I think it was totally legal what the original company did, but just doesn't sit right with us.
Yeah, legal doesn't mean right, and illegal doesn't mean wrong, right? You gotta have a moral compass. I wonder how those people sleep at night, right? You have to sleep at night thinking that you're the hero of the story, and that person is clearly the villain. I'm sure they find a way in their mind how to sleep, right? I think John Oliver did a episode. I don't watch it anymore because it always puts me in a bad mood, because it's always like, here's why the world's a terrible place, on mobile homes and these parks, and how private equity is coming in and buying them up, and people are losing their homes, and it's terrible. So I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities like that out there, and ways to make money off of it. And maybe they work on a soup kitchen.
Yeah, I have a firm stance to not do mobile home parks. And I talked to one of the largest mobile home park owners in the US, just casual conversation. And he was saying that it's great. You can keep increasing rent because they have nowhere else to go other than the streets.
Right. How do they sleep at night?
I have no idea. I know I couldn't. And I tell our investors, not only do I want you to get a good investment, want you to sleep well, knowing we're good stewards of your money. So not just in terms of giving you a good return, but putting it in places that you'd be proud to tell people that we're doing.
So it seems like the advantage of the physician, like the fact that you're physicians, one is we know that our money's going to be in a good place because you guys have a moral compass. Also, you get to go rogue a little bit, and not go rogue, but incognito. Right, not as real estate investors, but as physicians, and you can collect a little information that way. Any other reason why, and we know you guys are smart because you made it through med school and you made it through residency, and you can't do that unless you're pretty smart and pragmatic. So and work hard. So we know you've got those traits because you're one of us. But anything else?
Yeah, I think a lot of this gets thrown around a lot, but disruption. If you talk about Uber, you talk about Airbnb, they all came from outside of real estate. And a lot of times we're just doing things that are different. So the way we approach debt, and which is super important right now, the way we approach renovations, things have been done a certain way, just like in medicine, right? Now there's all these new antibiotics, there's all these new stuff, and we were doing things, and in the past, now we're like, shoot, we were actually hurting people. Like, for example, during COVID in the beginning, I was doing a lot of intubations, and we're like, 92% time to intubate, right? And but that was standard of care. And so we are able to come from an outsider perspective, see like, oh, why do you guys do this? Why is it done like this? Can we do something differently? And I think that's extremely helpful, and our deals kind of benefit. So can we use technology? Can we have virtual showings? Can we have leasing agents that are virtual? Can we have flexibility? And everyone benefits. So real estate in general, and if you guys have been to our website, you'll know that we don't necessarily look like the traditional real estate people. And we went to a conference, and we definitely don't look like the traditional real estate people. But I think that working as a physician, we're problem solvers, and having that ability, I think, is just huge in real estate, which people are very kind of set in their ways.
So in medicine, we don't really have to sell ourselves. Although I would argue, and I do sometimes on this podcast, that you do, that like, each patient that you meet, you need to convince them that the plan is the right plan. And you also need to convince them that they should be sending their friends to you. That's how you grow your practice. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do that as a hospitalist. You don't want them to send their friends to you. Come to the hospital and Dr. Parikh will take care of you. But we do need to be sales. We need to maybe not acknowledge it, but it does happen. But now that you've got a fund, you're looking for money, you've got to sell. So how does that feel now, being in this different position?
I'd argue that selling at the hospital is more difficult, and the stakes are just so much higher, right? You have this person that is an alcoholic and delirium tremens, and you're like, dude, you should stop drinking, or someone that's addicted to heroin, or you're having some of these difficult conversations about cancer and all this stuff. And I would say any conversation I've had at the hospital is 10 times worse than, or more difficult, nerve wracking. I think a lot of times as physicians, we forget all the skills we have. We've learned so much. We've been through so much. And I have people come to me so often. They're like, Pranay, you think I could do this? I'm just a doctor. Seriously? You're a doctor. Like, I'm not just a doctor, you are a doctor. So forget the just. And a lot of these skills, that's why people are so successful. But we have to get past ourselves. And so that's number one. I remember, so I used to teach at USC, Intro to Clinical Medicine, called ICM, where it was cool. Starting week 2, we start talking to patients, and I'm teaching them. I was like, hey, before you go in the room, like, here's some box breathing, right? Here's where it's okay to touch people, here's how you wake people up. Like, you feel like you almost have to relearn stuff that you do on a daily basis without even thinking about it. So in the starting, yeah, it's nerve wracking. Even though I've had all these very serious conversations, had to sell people to save their lives, right? Really, you're like, okay, dude, you have cirrhosis, like you really, really cannot drink anymore. But it's really just changing your mind. And it's a circle, because what I have learned to become more persuasive and to influence in a good way, right? One, because you have to do it. All the people that have bad intentions, they're doing it too. So you need to do it if you're going to have a good influence. But two, a lot of the skills I learned in entrepreneurship and real estate, I'm able to take back into medicine. Like, hey, let me try this with this person because this is something different, or like maybe they will respond to this way instead of the 10 other ways that I've tried. Because, people are surprised when I'm talking to them. They're like, yeah, I've been here 10 times for heroin. Like, people just give up. They won't even talk to me. I'm like, yeah, I'm hoping that all those, I'm kind of building on all their experience, that maybe one of these days it works, and we shouldn't give up on people. So
this is a good opportunity actually to plug your podcast, MD to Entrepreneur, because I've been listening to it. I think it's great. But you're not talking about being a physician there. I mean, you're talking about being an entrepreneur, but a lot of the skills that your guests talk about do translate into medicine, right? How to make your clients into raving fans. Well, we want to make our patients into raving fans, right? How to keep your staff and make sure that nobody ever leaves. Okay, we want the same thing. We don't want our staff to ever leave. We want them to enjoy working there and therefore treat the patients well. So a lot of the stuff that you've covered from the perspective of entrepreneurship really does translate and is really important. It's actually a lot of what we do here on the show as well. So yes, for those out there, if you like what Pranay has to say, you should definitely check out his podcast, MD to Entrepreneur. Then there's one more question that I want to get to before we go. And I had a guest a few weeks ago talking about climate change and medicine and how it's going to impact the practice of medicine. How is that impacting your choice of investments? As someone who's living in New York and it is 40 degrees every day and hasn't snowed all season, and up north, right, in the Catskills, in the Berkshires, like there's no snow. And my wife is from Switzerland. We go see her family every Christmas. No snow, right? Things are changing. So how does that come into play when you're making investments, especially when these investments are supposed to be, right? You're taking out a mortgage. This is a 10-year mortgage. This is maybe a 30-year mortgage. Things are going to be different by the time you've paid this off. So how is that involved in your decision making?
So it's definitely involved, especially when you're in somewhere like Houston, like Texas. So people will come up to us and they'll say, hey, we have this deal. It's in a 100-year floodplain. And that's a nope for us, because we've been having, a 100-year flood every couple of years. There's 1,000 years and everything's being accelerated. So climate is definitely something that we have to keep in mind, especially in Florida, you got to worry about hurricanes. The nice thing is that we're insured for that. And that's something that we also need to keep in mind, that we have the right insurance, not just they'll replace all our stuff, but they'll replace our income, right? If it takes them 2 years to replace your housing, you're losing 2 years of rent unless you have the right thing. So we're being very selective with the deals that we do, especially in floodplains, fire areas in California. And I think all these climate tragedies or natural disasters are just happening more often. Regardless of what you think about climate change, can't argue that things are happening more often. And we have to assume that these things that were super rare are going to happen more often. So try to avoid the stuff that's going to happen more often, and then make sure you have good insurance.
All right. Awesome. Well, you've convinced me. So if I want to invest, where do I find you?
I'm at ascentequitygroup.com. You can sign up for our newsletter. We give out information, and there's also information to get on my calendar. I'm happy to talk. What we really want is we want doctors to get into good deals. Even if it's not our deals, we're happy. As long as you're investing right, you're investing in real estate and a sponsor, that's great. So I'm happy to talk about anything real estate related.
Love it. One of my friends who's in real estate is fond of saying the stock market is for people not smart enough to invest in real estate. So there's a lot to that. So if people want to follow you online specifically, where do they find the podcast? Where do they find you?
My podcast is From MD to Entrepreneur. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, Google. And the best place to reach out to me is LinkedIn, Pranay Parikh.
Fantastic. Dr. Pranay Parikh, Ascent Equity, From MD to Entrepreneur. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a positive review on your favorite podcast player. I'm also available for medical legal consulting and keynote speaking if you're interested, or to just give us some feedback on the show, email me at brad@physiciansguidetodoctoring.com. I'll see you next week. The ideas expressed in this podcast are those of the interviewer and interviewee and do not represent those of their respective employers.